Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max.
Welcome, everyone. We are the Geek Patrol, and our microphones don't have a stun setting. Today, we're joining you from a Klingon garage sale. And they could have washed the blood off first, at least. Or is this bragging rights? It's like, hey, look what I went through to get this.
You got to leave a little bit of the hair hanging around. So
no, I think one of them has a head still kind of poked into it.
Yeah. And I don't want to know what that table's made out of over there, Allan. But
it has an interesting smell, to give you that.
The prices are good, though. I'm definitely walking home with some.
You need to get some new.
It's because they don't. It's because they don't know how to barter. That's a Ferengi's job.
Yeah.
Ferengi garage sale is a mess.
Oh, yeah. I don't even get near those guys. Anyway, welcome to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. And if you're wondering why you haven't heard Brandon Olmsted...
it's because I'm making up for him.
Yeah, because he's not here.
He's trapped.
I'm Joe Thorderson, here with my friends Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there, and not behind the glass, and not Brandon Olmsted. He's stuck somewhere.
I stuck him behind the glass.
Okay, whatever. He's not here. That's all we need to know. I don't know where he's at. He's got some...
We haven't gotten a ransom demand yet, but we're expecting one any minute.
And we don't wait for anything. If you ain't here, it's moving on. So we'll find out next week, I'm sure, what he was up to. So, hey, Allan, what won't wait till next week, at least, is our hot take on the season finale of Secret Invasion, because honestly, I'm just kind of eager to get it out of the way and move on with my life. But
you're not the only person with that opinion.
Let's just put it this way. I was, not wrong in when you guys were asking me about canceling Disney Plus and everything and missing out on Secret Invasion. My original take was, I think, the correct one. But anyway, hey, also, I've got something interesting to throw at you guys. Everybody's talking about Barbie, this Barbie and Oppenheimer, Barbenheimer and all that. But I want to throw something out there, and I want to get your guys' take on it later in the show.
Okay.
I'm going to compare the movie Oppenheimer to Joker. You can ponder that, and I think you probably can guess where I'm going with this.
I think I know where you're going,
Yeah, and I just wanted to say something about, and I don't want to be a hater all day, but it's just an observation. So we have other things that we're going to get to. But before we get to any of that, we also had something, I'm going to call this recommended viewing, and really a sobering realization about just how rotten my ancestors were, Allan. And Max recommended a show that I've learned to trust Max's judgment when it comes to anime. And folks, if you're out there and you just don't even look at anime, if you just say, well, it's just not my thing, I really hope you would reconsider. Anime, as we have said in the past, has some of the best writing, best storytelling devices, interesting animation, and they really are good at probing human emotion. And one such anime is, it's called Vinland Saga. And Max, so this is not a really old anime, right? I mean, this is, you recommended this to me.
The most recent season actually came out this year.
Right. So this isn't one of these cases of being late to the party, but I'm just finishing up season 1, Allan, and this is a very gritty look at what the Vikings were like. And not just the Vikings, but all the fighting that went on there in that area with the
You know what I will say? I will say, though? It does have violence, but at the same time, it has just enough to not be so over the top. It frames it just enough to where it's like you can understand the brutality of the time without getting too out there.
Yeah, but you know what? It's one of these shows where literally I start maybe rooting for somebody, and then I just can't because what they do is so unforgivable. It's one of those, Allan. They don't try to say all the heroes are over here, all the villains are over here. It's a mixed bag, but
well, as history has pointed out, who is the hero and who is the villain really determines your point of view and where you landed in the conflict.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know. It's like what you see is really, I mean, we always talk about, those Vikings, they pillage and they go to that. Well, we see that in this show, and it really just makes you cringe. It's like, gosh, what rotten people. I mean, I'm sorry.
But then
there's
again,
no justifying killing women and children and stealing all their stuff and burning their village down for, I don't know, man. It's like, point of view. I don't know.
Well, the point of view is we have never, throughout European history, been, A, good at sharing, or B, been good at having neighbors.
Yeah, yeah.
We are perpetually looking for the greener pastures.
Right.
And, well, if so-and-so had this and so-and-so had that, and history is full of examples of accidentally killing the golden goose.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we're here because we're here to get the such and such. Well, congratulations, you accidentally killed it.
Well, the thing is, too, this one, they really seem to go, okay, there's all these little subtle details, Max, that I noticed. They go out of their way to, I feel like, portray this somewhat historically accurate. And you said that the writer of this show actually traveled and spent time in
Scandinavia.
Right, right.
And not only that, but, like, the names are historic. Like, Canute was an actual leader at the time, and Thorfinn was actually named after a Viking explorer. And there's a character named Leif Erikson.
Oh, yeah.
Who do you think that is?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Leif Erikson's the only guy in the show I'm still rooting for. I will say that. So he, now we haven't seen Eric the Red yet, his dad, but Leif Erikson, yeah, you could pull for him here. He's still noble and he wants to. He's an explorer. That's really what he is. And spoiler, folks, you learn this early in the show, so I don't care. You're learning this in the first episode. There's a very strong case historically, Allan, that you could make that the Vikings got to America way before Christopher Columbus, right? I mean, I think it's almost, we sort of agree on this.
I think it is a given that Columbus was politically the most important discoverer of America.
Right.
The Vikings that got to America first got Tesla in terms of like Thomas Edison.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, I mean, the Native Americans were here long before anybody else. But if we're talking about coming over from the European side, and they play up to that in this show, and they speak about Vinland. That's what they call America,
right.
And they talk about what a beautiful and bountiful place it is, and open and so for them, it's like it's almost their version of paradise. And
they said free
cool.
from these chains of slavery and war.
Right, right. So, but it's highly recommended. Don't watch it with your kid. It's really violent. It's barbaric.
It is
almost,
not a child's cartoon.
No.
It is a true anime in the fact that it is telling a grown-up story.
Absolutely. So, all right, Allan, on the flip side of that, we have Secret Invasion, and we'll talk about that when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Pee Wee Herman burned Max the producer's fan letters. The Geek Patrol is back.
And then he mailed them back to make it even worse. I mean, that's talk about twisting the knife, Max. So.
And not only that, I think he put like really weird lipstick on it.
He's just just don't let him bother you, Max. Okay.
I'm walking away from all of that.
Okay. And welcome back. And welcome back to Geek Tank. Yeah, we were going down Weirdville Lane, so let's just end this one. I'm Joe Thorderson. Let me start again. Welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. Brandon Olmsted is not here, and I don't know where he's at, but we had to get started, Allan. The clock waits for no one. So, Brandon, you can tell us your war stories next week on wherever it is you've been. Hey, speaking of war stories, if you're just tuning in, earlier in the show, we were heartily recommending a really well-made anime called Vinland Saga, all about the history of like the Vikings and intrigue, political intrigue back in the day with all the Celts and the English and all that. All those guys just fighting every day of the they get up and they go fight somebody and then they but it's really well done. Just don't watch it with your kids. It's very violent too. But on the flip side of that, Allan, we it behooves us to talk about Secret Invasion. I want to say something. This is how many? Okay, let's see. Iron Man was 2008. Am I correct? That's when we first
roughly. Yeah, that's good.
I know. You could make the case.
There was a Hulk
Spider-Man,
before that.
Hulk, yeah.
Right.
But if we want to talk about the modern incarnation of the
Iron Man 1 is the beginning of the Marvelverse.
And I remember in my mind, though, I still feel like you could make the case that the first Captain America movie really triggered it because he started in the 40s and everything. But one thing I remember about watching some of those early movies is the element where there was something surprising happened, something you didn't predict happened, and something interesting happened. And I remember, just that feeling of, wow, this is cool. This is a comic book come to life and all this. Mm-hmm. But, man, I don't want to sound like a hater, but I'm going to sound like a hater. Man, we're getting to the point where it is so formulaic and so predictable and really almost down to the minute. You're like, okay, here's where the twist comes. And I just was bored to death by Secret Invasion, Alan. I'm sorry. And there was way too much talking.
All right, well, I'm going to
complaint-
use Secret Invasion as a new phrase.
Okay.
I'm going to use it. I'm going to use the word plot spackle.
Talk to me. You've said this before, but
I have.
Okay.
In every major franchise, you only have so long to tell a story in a movie.
Sure.
You got 90
the clock
pages.
waits for nobody.
Right. You got 90 pages of script if you're lucky,
Okay.
plus your fight scenes, plus your action, plus your this and that. You ain't got a lot of room.
Right.
So there's a lot of quickie exposition trying to get you from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've now discovered, thank you, Netflix, a few years ago, where we could explore Daredevil.
Right. That's a well done. Yeah.
Well, Daredevil was also a lot of talking and stuff. However, it's because he was covered in bandages from being beat half to death, in the last episode.
Sorry, Alan, you just made me think. Okay, sorry, I interrupted. Daredevil's a perfect example. Season 1 was outstanding.
Yes.
Season 2 got a little, but then they redeemed themselves in season 3, and season 3 might almost be the best one. They learned from their mistakes.
Yes.
Which I don't feel is happening here on this.
What we're getting here is spackle to handle getting from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got movie A. So we had Endgame,
Right.
and we introduced of Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel or whoever you want to call her.
Right.
And now we're getting ready to start launching into the next phase of the comic books.
Right.
And we need several Marvels, but we also need to explain at length all of the problems leading into this. So welcome to, I'm going to call them the spackle shows. This is where we're going to have 6 episodes of something or 8 episodes of something that fill in the plot holes or build up something, so now we can go have a movie or we can have another series.
Well, the problem though with this situation, Alan, is because this is to me the downside. One thing with DC, they've positioned themselves. I know they want all this interconnectivity, but they don't technically have that now, which I think helps it. Like the Batman is its own thing. It's gonna, whatever happens there doesn't affect what's happening with Justice League movies or Shazam. Well, because they have this interconnectedness, it creates more problems than it solves, in my opinion, because one thing right out of the gate, at the end of Secret Invasion, you're like, okay, let's be honest. If they'd have brought Captain Marvel in, they could have solved this problem in 5 minutes. It would have, but they can't because it would solve the problem in 5 minutes. And also, there's people that are or they can't bring Thor in, or they can't bring other because their contracts are up. And what plays out here, it's just so obvious that people's contracts are up. Things are real, and so it just falls flat. It's like this. I don't know.
The other thing you ought to look at is Don Cheadle carried anything yet?
What do you mean?
Well, he's been, kind of the sidekick. Has Samuel L. Jackson, one of the most renowned actors of our time, what has he carried?
Well, I mean,
he hasn't. He's been an ensemble player. Don Cheadle's been an ensemble player. So,
and they're great on camera. They deliver dialogue well. They're charismatic. They didn't give
sadly
enough to work
they
with
gave
here.
them a spackle plot. So we're trying to get from where we left off over here. We're trying to spackle in enough interest to get us to the next big action blockbuster.
I just think that it's going to need. I don't know. Maybe the
that
machine
was
is
my
too
impression.
Big. Right?
So,
no, I agree. It's just, but it seems like it's too big. The Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what would be so bad about it.
It has gotten unwieldy.
It is, and it's like like I said. I think the original Captain America movie is a prime example. That movie can stand alone. I could watch it today.
Yep.
It's just as meaningful. And whether you've seen all the other movies in the cinematic universe, you're still going to get something out of it. Same with like the first Iron Man or something. But all this interconnected stuff is starting to wear me out, Alan. And and then I don't know, the whole thing with that AI generated intro. Now I'm really seeing that as just a jerk move by. I mean, that was the timing. Now that we're seeing the strike and all this other, it's just. I don't know.
Well, you do these things on occasion that are genius.
Yeah.
And sometimes timing is not for you.
No. We'll wrap. We have some parting thoughts about that. Then I have a thought-provoking discussion coming up comparing Oppenheimer to the Joker movie.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. They're not afraid to call him Voldemort. The Geek Patrol is back.
No, I mean, you'll buy him a glass of butterbeer, too, and go hang out for 30 minutes.
What do you do with your cousins, man? You got to do something.
You see the butterbeer in his hand so that you don't see the knife in his other hand.
There you go. And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And Brandon's not here. He'll be back next week. Mm-hmm. Whatever. So we don't know. Well, I mean, we don't know where he's at. He just...
like I said, I'm waiting on an owl to bring in a... ransom demand. So we'll see what happens.
I was really, hating on Secret Invasion, mostly because, we're paying for this stuff. We have
we are.
And but the thing is, I just want to, my last thing though is, Allan, you were talking about this as a spackle plot.
Yep.
You know what's really ironic about that? Because we talked about this on Tool Talk. Spackle, believe it or not, folks, this is a little home improvement tip. If you've got like a stain on your wall, suppose you got a pencil mark on your wall, believe it or not, take a little spackle, put it on a wet cloth and rub it, and you'd be amazed. It'll remove that pencil mark.
It will.
Spackle is a solvent. Spackle can deteriorate things. And using your analogy there, Allan, see how I brought it full circle? The more you add to these... Okay, so Allan, like I said, Captain America, the first movie, first Iron Man, some of the early MCU, I will die on that hill. Great movies, lots of fun. But the more you start adding to this universe with mediocre products like Secret Invasion, I think you erode what might have already, maybe you like the Captain Marvel movie. I think this stuff erodes that to a degree. It's kind of, you know what I mean? It's like the more you start, because sometimes if you start picking too close at like the Harry Potter universe, you start going, okay, there's a million holes in this plot.
Oh, yeah.
And the more you talk about it in like Fantastic Beasts or something, the more you undo it. And I think that's what they're doing here. They're eroding their own history. So.
Well, I think we're also getting into production fatigue.
Yeah.
It's exciting when you wait a year or two to see these characters again.
Yeah.
You don't want to wait 10 years. You're going to forget about them.
There's a magic formula.
There's kind of a time period where I'll pick on Lord of the Rings. They shot all 3 movies all at one time. They released them 18 months apart.
That was great. I remember that. Yeah.
I mean, they took a massive $300 million chance at that time, and they talked about the number of models and stuff that were, 18 months of a short career was spent on set looking like an elf.
Right, yeah.
And so a lot of people bet really, really big, and fortunately for everybody involved, it's absolutely stellar. It's a complete classic. It's all these wonderful things. But you didn't get Tolkien overload. There weren't 3 Tolkien shows to bide you over between movie to movie.
Not unlike, I remember that distinctly. I remember getting excited, going, okay, we're only 6 months away, and
it's counting down.
It's an event, and then it's not unlike the original Star Wars trilogy.
So
it was
now
spaced enough.
We're finishing this one just in time to take about a 2-week break off for Shark Week, because nobody wants to compete with Shark Week. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to pick up the next product.
Yeah,
the next Marvel product to carry you down to the next Marvel product, to carry you down to the movie release.
Right.
I love these characters.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say kind of a mean thing. I can't miss you if you won't go away.
That's how we leave it. That's the drop the mic quote. Yeah. We can't miss you if you don't go away. Let's move along. I can't top that one. So, all right, Al, I have sort of I don't know if this is an intellectual question, but this is more uplifting and positive. I think it is. So I have my wife saw Oppenheimer. I know several people that have seen Oppenheimer. Some reviewers that I actually trust saw Oppenheimer.
The surprise breakout and major dollar maker, Oppenheimer.
Yeah. Now, I will say,
and for a biopic, it's making money unheard of.
Well, here's what I'll say. This is the cold hard universal. They're saying it's a great movie. The reviews are saying though it probably would have been better if it was a little shorter. Like it went on quite a bit. They also said some of the dialogue is interesting but a little sterile. It lacked kind of the human connection, I guess you could say, where you're learning a lot of history and you're learning a lot,
right.
but you don't necessarily learn any more about who Oppenheimer is as a man than you did at the beginning of the movie or a lot of the others. So a little bit of coldness, I could say.
Well, these people weren't the warmest people in the world to start with.
Yeah, but they're all people. So I want to flip that. And they created something that's basically could wipe out humanity. I mean, that's a pretty emotional topic. And then I was thinking about it. And one of my favorite movies of all time, which please don't watch this with your kids, is Joker.
Right.
And when I remember the experience of watching Joker, it honestly felt like that movie was about 30 minutes long. It went so fast and it was so interesting to me. And I'm thinking of that saying that Shakespeare always said about brevity is the soul of wit.
Right.
But also I was just thinking the Joker is almost the flip side of what I'm hearing about Oppenheimer. If you look, there was not a ton of dialogue in Joker. A lot of it was visual storytelling. It was visual acting,
dialogue, right.
And I felt like I knew every character in that movie by the end of it. And I think there's something to be said for that kind of storytelling.
Well,
so, I mean,
Oppenheimer is, as we just got through talking about the Marvelverse, Oppenheimer is everything that most of the movies for the last 15 years haven't been.
What do you mean?
There's no fight scenes, no aliens. Nobody's going to blow up no one's going to blow up the half of the universe by snapping their fingers.
Right.
This was a biopic of a fixed point in history that is utterly, totally, and completely ingrained in human history from now on.
Right.
This happened.
Yeah.
This happened because these people did this. And so there's no suits, there's no flying. There is the action is we all know what's going to happen.
But it's still a movie, and it's based on
doing
storytelling.
Really well.
Yeah, but so I guess what I was going to throw out there to the panel, and maybe we can visit when we come back, is basically telling a story, you know, that's engaging for everybody, and using what, you know, like I said, human emotion, and using the notion of brevity, because that's what's lacking here. So
brevity for a 3-hour movie.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So we'll unpack that when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Herman Munster just put his house on the market. The Geek Patrol is back.
I mean, Allan, you've already got a bid in, right?
Yes, I do.
Just double check that laboratory, Allan. Make sure everything's disconnected.
I can't wait.
And welcome. What are you doing? Okay. And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. Max is a little flummoxed. I thought he had a snappy rejoinder for that too.
I'm ready to look under the stairs.
Herman Munster rocks. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass, and not Brandon. We're going to hear about where he was next week, wherever that might be. So. Hey, real quick, in a minute we're going to return to our conversation, which is more of it's more of a thought exercise or a round table. I was comparing the movie Oppenheimer to Joker in terms of their approach and everything like that. I just want to mention something though, Allan. We have to welcome, I want to welcome a new sponsor for the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention, which is coming up November 10th through 12th at the University of Memphis Holiday Inn. And this is going to be interesting. Now, Allan, you've dealt with bonsai trees.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Max, you own one, I thought.
His name is Soshiro. I didn't mention it before, but I found out that it meant the white monk.
The white monk. Okay. Well, anyway, bonsai trees are pretty cool, you know.
They are.
We have a nursery here in Olive Branch that is one of the biggest. I guess it actually is Well, is it America's largest bonsai?
I believe it is.
If it ain't, it sure looks like it is.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're jumping on board. They're sponsoring the convention. We're happy to have them. So they're going to have a booth set up there. And they're also going to do workshops on bonsai trees. So that's going to be cool. If you want to visit them, if you live here in the Mid-South, then get over to 8125 Center Hill Road in Olive Branch. You can also give them a call at 800-582-2593. So welcome aboard to Brussels Bonsai. If you want to sponsor the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention, get in touch with me directly at 901-921-7105. And if you want to get tickets to the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention, go to memphiscfc.com.
Now just say Brussels Bonsai Botanicals really fast.
No, I'm not saying any of that, so that's too... You did a pretty good job with that, though, Max. So, all right. Hey, Allan, shifting gears back to our conversation. Like I said, I'm hearing great things about Oppenheimer, but universally, if you're being objective, they said it's a little bit sterile. It could have been shorter. It's sterile in terms of we don't really necessarily get to know these characters on an emotional level. We get to learn what they did and what part they played in history, and you do learn a lot of science. But I was comparing that to the Joker, which had very little dialogue, and I learned a lot, and it was a very emotional, great movie. But I don't know. I was just talking. I always think of that term, brevity is the soul of wit, that Shakespeare said. But I really think movies are storytelling, Allan, and
they are.
Some are better than others. So
Oppenheimer is giving us a refreshing look at narrative storytelling, which we haven't had in a while.
Is it refreshing to be? They say it's a lot of talking.
Some of us, talking is action, Joe. And to the $240 million worldwide in sales, I will tell you the world is refreshed to have a movie that actually has talking and exposition.
They have
now,
that. So.
6 more of these, and they're going to die again. Okay. I'm going to say the brevity here is one of these every so often is a great thing.
Okay.
Oppenheimer was an amazing story. Again, a fixed point in history. We all know what happened. We don't necessarily know how it came around to happen, and you go watch this movie and you get to find out. But the biggest thing is we haven't had a movie with a slower pace, and all the action is going to be at the end. We already know what's going to happen.
It kind of makes me think, this isn't my point, but it kind of makes me think of Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia is one of those good slow burn movies. But what I wanted to get to with regards to keeping things succinct and kind of letting something other than dialogue tell the story, I'm wondering how Christopher Nolan, if he did, could have done better or already did better with regards to letting music kind of tell the story as well, because I'm reminded of like the work of Beethoven. When you listen to some of his pieces, you can sense the desperation and the loneliness. And there's something about music that could say something better than words words couldn't.
There's a, Max, okay, there's a great quote. There's sometimes talking about something is worse. It's harder to find the words to describe, try to describe a beautiful sunset or something, or just show us a beautiful sunset. You know what I mean?
I will. It's like I will throw out an entire genre that completely relies on what Max just said.
Talk to me.
Spaghetti westerns.
Music. The dusty trail.
Let's face it. If I go wow wow wow,
right?
Everybody in here knows the song, knows the scene, knows exactly what's happened, knows who it stars. It's an instant cue, and there were entire 5 to 10 minute segments that were nothing but characters standing there, and maybe a word or two every so often. But it was the music and the atmosphere.
You could even make the case that dialogue can sometimes undercut emotion because, like you said, visually, it's a visual medium. You got to let the visuals talk.
And not only that, but you don't have to tell the story with just your words. You could also say it with your face or your eyes. There's a lot of power to just what can you convey just by the power of someone's face?
Absolutely.
V for Vendetta.
And
you watch that mask like it's a face.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, Agent Smith did the best job ever.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think, by all accounts, it's a great movie. However, it could have benefited from a little, if you're going to.
I don't know. It seems to have hit its stride.
Well, the truth is too. A lot of people don't want to criticize Christopher Nolan and everything. And if you have to be objective, he seems like a cool guy. I like Christopher Nolan, but if you're really objective, he has a lot of failings in his movies. If you're just being honest, I'm sorry.
Everybody does. I'm just happy to see Barbie and Oppenheimer, two drastically different movies than we've had in a while, blowing up the box office and giving us a decent summer movie run.
Well, we've got those. So, yeah, and it is, hey, let's face it, at least it's different. I hate to say it. It's not a superhero movie.
I hate to say it, but, I think I said what I said about Marvel last segment. This time I'm happy to see two very different movies doing extremely well, wrapping up the summer blockbuster run.
All right. Well, speaking of wrapping up, you guys, we got to get out of here. It is over, and it's time to go home. So until next week, we are the Geek Patrol, and I am Joe Thorderson.
I'm Maximilian.
And I'm Allan Gilbreth, daring you to dream big, think large, and visualize.